Okay, good evening. Welcome. Welcome to the Co-Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist. I'm very sorry we had to cancel last week because of the snowstorm, but that now gives us the opportunity to start still with the first week. And I'm delighted to see everyone here in person tonight and other attendees joining us on the live stream for our first session of our reflection on Lent and the event of Easter through art. As a reminder, the live stream will remain available on YouTube under Co-Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist Reflection. So this is a good opportunity to watch a reflection if you can't attend or can't watch it live. First of all, I would like to thank Father Mann and also everyone in St. John's for the continued support in our endeavor to use art and beauty to further explore and expand our faith. I would like to thank Brian to help us in updating the technology to further improve our experience of these lecture series. I am Ulrike McGregor. I was born and raised in Germany. I have a Ph.D. in human physiology and worked for 8 years in the endocrine research unit at the Mayo Clinic. Thereafter, I had the wonderful opportunity to live in the heart of London, and it was there that I acquired a master's in fine and decorative art from Sotheby's Institute of Art. In our reflection series over the next 5 weeks, we will focus next. All works of art that I have chosen for this Lenten season are different from last year's reflection series. However, we will meet a few of as regards to the format, look at 3 works of art in detail, one by one. In each case, before we explore and reflect on the individual artwork, I will provide information on the artist and the historical context. You will then have time to look at the artwork itself as I read a short, relevant gospel passage. With that gospel reading in mind, together we will explore the work. I will pose questions, guide us through the process of close observation, and respond to your impressions of the piece. I will ask you to describe the work of art. We may comment on the type of artwork, its size, its subjects, figures. Observations can help us to and response. And at that point, I hope you all will actively participate in this exploration. As we know, art is very personal in that we all have had different upbringings, experiences, environments. And lastly, there will be a handout available to everyone in this room, as well as a PDF for everyone who follows us on the live stream. The handout depicts and contains general information about the artworks, a summary of the artist, and in some cases, additional interesting background information. So let's get started. With the lingering impression of last week's celebration of Ash Wednesday, we will now start our reflection on Lent and Easter. Lent is a time when Christians honor the 40 days and nights Christ spent in the desert, where he was fasting and being tempted by the devil. But more importantly, it is time to prepare our hearts alongside Jesus for his passion, death, and resurrection through daily prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. On this slide, you can see the timeline of the different artistic eras, periods, and movements in European art, and where the works we will discuss tonight fall. The first painting from the Renaissance, entitled The Battle Between Carnival and Lent, is by Peter Bruegel the Elder. It illustrates the busyness of our lives with all its attractions, desires, lurking traps, and the real choice we have to make if we want to enter into Lent full-heartedly. We will then turn from the Renaissance to a contemporary work of art by Albert Herbert. Ash Wednesday confronts us with our original sin and our realization that to dust we will return. The stillness in our third work, the temptation in the wilderness, by Britton Riviere, from the end of the 19th century, is a wonderful contrast to the busyness in the first painting. With this brief introduction and overview on how the lectures will be organized, I would like to begin to explore our first work of art of this evening. It is entitled The Battle Between Carnival and Lent, and was painted in 1559 by Peter Bruegel the Elder. During our Advent review to you tonight, just a brief summary of his life. Peter Bruegel the Elder was born around 1525 to 1530 in Breda in the Low Countries. Early in his life, he moved to Antwerp, one of the most vibrant commercial cities in Northern Europe, as well as the center of publishing in the Netherlands. Peter Bruegel had spent time in Rome and other cities in Italy. Initially, he returned to Antwerp, but then moved to Brussels in 1562-1563, and he died there in 1569. Artist, active over 4 generations in the 16th and 17th centuries. He was hugely inventive. He was a painter and draftsman, whose impact was widespread and long-lasting. From the ongoing artwork of his children and grandchildren, including Peter Bruegel the Younger and Jan Bruegel the Elder. And you noticed a discrepancy in the last name, and that's not a typo. They did choose to spell their last names differently than the father. A number of Bruegel's paintings focus on the lives of Flemish commoners, which earned him the nickname Peasant Bruegel. However, he was firmly connected to the wealthy and powerful. Bruegel's work demonstrates the artist's attentive eye for detail and attests to his direct observation of village settings. However, they are far from simple recreations of everyday life. The powerful compositions brilliantly organized and controlled, reflect a sophisticated artistic design. The ongoing debate over the interpretation of Bruegel's peasant images underscores the complexity and originality of his conceptions. Peter Bruegel created conversation pieces, encouraging people like us for the last 450 years to spend time with his paintings and to decipher the meaning of his work, but also to learn about ourselves. As we consider tonight's first painting, I would like to quote from 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 2. I quote, "Behold, now is a very acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation." The battle between Carnival and Lent describes the events starting Thursday. No one works and everyone parties. Well, that's the end, but then it comes to an end. And then the beginning of Lent in the town square, and this is set in the Low Countries. I would like to invite you to walk with me among the numerous scenes painted by Bruegel. Initially, they seem like total chaos, but when we consider each of them individually, they begin to form an extraordinary story. We will eventually find the 3 pivotal aspects of Lent in here, in the painting, which is prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And now I want to ask you what you see in this painting. Yes?
So on the right-hand side of the screen, I see prayer.
We need to talk to the microphone to help the people that live.
So on the right-hand side of the screen, what I see is like a church, and it looks like there's a priest in there for prayer.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if there are nuns on that right-hand side, but if you take a look at some of them, there's also some in the round as well too. I mean, Carmelites, they're serving the poor.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I take a look at the lady that's cleaning the windows, it also reminds me of Lent, that you want to transform and have a clean heart.
Well, that's already a great start. I'm impressed. Thank you very much. This is a good start. Anyone else?
Just one of the things that struck me first was that we always talk about color, as I see so much in green, red.
Yes.
I'm sure there's some significance.
Yes, absolutely. I believe every and most artists are, even though with this, again, it seems chaotic, but this is planned out to the minute detail, and yes, the colors are not a coincidence. And I think what is beautiful, he uses the red to lead our eye around the painting. If you see, it's kind of strategically placed. So we have a lot of red down here. And we will go into all the details and what it means more and more as we spend time with the painting. I like giving you an overview so we kind of orientate ourselves into the painting. So the largest area of red is down here, and then it leads us over here. So this is obviously a very interesting scene, which we will look at in more detail. And then we have red dotted all over the place. Clothing usually are part of the people that wear. And so it leads our eye up here, and then around, and then up here. And then, yes, it comes down here. So he uses the red color to help us to walk around the village and to tap into all the different scenes within the painting. And also he kind of uses the green as a kind of a contrast too, so yes. Yes?
I can't help but notice the green, and lots of it. And what it sort of says to me that these people are all together. They have something in common. They live in this celebrating, and they're getting ready to enter into Lent, and it draws my eye all the way up to the top of the painting, actually.
Yeah, it's true.
the roof, but it's a beautiful color, and it says to me that these people are a community.
Yes, absolutely. And there are, there's a little bit of a, I kind of lead you a little bit. So there seems to be a bit of a divide. So it's a vertical diagonal divide. And yes, all these people to our left are a community and celebrating Carnival. And again, we will pretty soon zoom into this, and there's a pub or a restaurant, and they're having a very good time over here with some plays going on, and not sure what's going on, and maybe we sometimes don't really want to know. And then, so a lot of like the carnival is going on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side is already Lent, so dominating with the church and then the nuns and the almsgiving. One quick aspect I would like to, if you look at the painting, where do you think we as a viewer are? You know what I mean? So are we in the midst of it? Are we part of it? Or are we more an observer from the outside? Yes, we're outside. Yes, we can imagine, because there's houses on this side, probably there are houses on this side. So, and I think we are like someone up here in the window. We are looking down into what's happening on the square. So now we're going to try something new. I added a hyperlink, and on your handout, and you might want to, when you get home and you're interested in it, it's called Inside Bruegel, and you can, what we do now, you can zoom into his paintings, and there's a number of his paintings, and it's just magnificent. I mean, you can down to the smallest detail, and you're going to see that now. It's just, if you wanted to look at it some more, or some of his other paintings as well.
Can I just take one from it first?
Oh, sure.
Just two other things I was struck with. It's my understanding in this period of time that the palette of colors was pretty restricted, and that blue was a color that was super expensive. And so I was looking to see is blue, not really. And then where the light, the main light is on that couple there in the middle with the shadow. I was struck by that too. I don't know what it means, but I just noticed that was
Kind of this area?
Right.
Yeah. And that's a very significant part of the painting, and we will come to that. So I was thinking maybe we start with the image in the foreground. Thank you. And just bear with me for a second. So, and here we have the battle between Carnival and Lent. So the Mr. Lent, Mr. Carnival is over here, and I think we can tell. He liked his food, and he enters the tournament with a spear, but he has filled it just to make sure he doesn't go hungry during the fight. He filled it up with meat and sausages and good food. And he is also balancing a blackbird pie on his head. And he's sitting on a barrel, which is, so since we're in the Low Countries, it's probably full with beer. So he is Mr. Carnival. However, he meets, in his battle, he meets very somber clothes, and she's sitting on the richest chair, and just, I love the shoes. So these are original Dutch wooden shoes. Again, model 1559. And her little card is being drawn by a nun and a monk. So there's so many details, and I think even just on this, while we zoom in, and this is just the foreground as we remember, we could spend a lot of time on this. Anyone, what this could be? Mm-hmm. It's a beehive. So we see the bees coming out there. So she's wearing a beehive as her mitre, and it symbolizes, and then beeswax is being used to make candles. So there's a direct association between worship and the bees. So I think that's beautiful. And we also can see everyone on her side, they're having the ashes on their forehead. I think this is really neat, isn't it? So we can see that, the little girl having her ashes on the forehead. And then so during Lent, and in the olden days, it was much stricter. So the foods that were actually not allowed to be eaten were eggs, milk, and butter. So that's why we have Shrove Tuesday. I don't know if you're familiar with the tradition. Why is there a Shrove Tuesday? So you use it up, and then you wouldn't have it through the 40 days of Lent. And the pretzel is actually made out of everything but butter, milk, and eggs. So it was actually developed by monks to come up with food that one could eat during the Lenten times. And I learned that, I didn't know that. So if we look at this, so this is like a pretzel. In the olden days, that's how one prayed. It was more like this, and it actually is the shape of a pretzel. And so again, I could talk about pretzels for the next 15 minutes, but we move on. And then also, I thought this was really neat. So these are loaves of bread, but there's a little bit missing. What happened? Excuse me?
Someone bit it.
Well, it does look like, but it's also now again reflects, if we keep thinking of the 3 pillars of Lent, it's the almsgiving, because it was a tenth of your bread you had to share with the poor. So it was kind of that little notch taken out of the bread. And I just need to keep an eye on mine. So that's Mrs. Lent, or Miss Lent. And let's go over to this side. So we are back on the side of where Carnival is being celebrated. And just a kind of, so what do we see in here?
I see fun over here, and then those figures that look a little horrified, or falling, or frightened, kind of in that section. Almost like they're reacting to, yeah, you all are having fun, but something different is coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also it is, everyone exactly is having fun and celebrating and dancing and probably gambling. The kids are playing here. And the poor and the people that are in need are actually ignored. So everyone is too busy kind of having a good time, so they're ignored on this side. If we then, however, go over to the other side, and this is quite nice because we can contrast the 2 sides between Lent and Carnival. So we have a different situation on this side. So we have almsgiving on this side, down here. And then we have the prayer. So the nuns are praying the rosary as they come out of the church. But then again,
So just to be a little bit naughty, yeah, in the middle, because I'm going to be baptizing some people at the Easter Vigil. So that beautiful, what do you call it? Water, there you go, is the baptismal font.
yes, exactly. So we're going to come to it. Exactly. So this is, because it's also in the center of the painting, it's a couple kind of wandering into the town, and they're probably not quite sure which way to turn in one case. They're following a jester at this point, which jesters are never very trustworthy. They probably lead you to the wrong side of life.
Looks like Satan.
Yeah, oh yeah, I like that. I'm sure Bruegel had something in mind along that way. And what I thought earlier when you was mentioning the green color, there's usually not a lot of green, I mean the green color is usually on the clothes, but I thought it was, the green color is here, and it leads over here. So I think this couple, at the end of the day, they will choose the right side and probably turn to church. And now to come to Father Mann's suggestion, of course, there's a beautiful well in the middle of the painting. And wells, as we see throughout the Bible again and again, is the spiritual origin. It's being used for baptism, which we again reflect all the time during Lent. So yes. So I very much think, yes, that's what Bruegel had in mind. One kind of, and again, he loves the naughtiness as well, Bruegel does. So a little thing I would like to point out here. And I hope you have as much fun with this as I do. Who is this?
That looks like a monkey.
Exactly. So if someone has a monkey on their back,
Something they can't get rid of.
yeah, exactly. And then also, I think she, even though she's coming over to the right side, and she's asking for almsgiving, and she's probably freely given, but who knows if she also is not quite honest with her potential needs. So I think it's really interesting. Peter Bruegel, he never, because we also don't know, no one says, I couldn't find it, he has, for example, never declared if he's Catholic or not, which when we think about it, it was in the Low Countries, there was a constant fight between Catholics and Lutherans. So he probably was also, many people probably chose not necessarily to declare it too much openly, and particularly he was a painter, he was depending on commissions. But also I think he liked to paint these religious themed paintings, but he always kind of puts a twist on it. So I thought that was really beautiful.
It's interesting too because the fish there, you can move that over a little bit, and the fish, of course, could be the sense of the not eating meat that's kind of stretching a little bit, perhaps, up above too. But it's also, there's two fish, also a sign of the Eucharist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, absolutely. And also, I didn't point it out, so when Miss Lent moved into Bethel, she's using a baker's pail, and she has to fish on that.
Did Bruegel paint himself in any of these characters?
No one ever pointed that out, but why not? I think that we have seen that in some works of art. Caravaggio liked to do that. Who knows? No one really pointed and think, however, oh no, Brian, did I miss this? Oh no, there you go. As you can see, we could spend a lot more time on this, but I think we should move on. I hope this was good for her. And I'm just going to click through this because I wasn't sure if the hyperlink would work, and I just had this as a background. Oh, to actually quickly, so you were pointing this out, the person cleaning the windows, and kind of a new beginning. I don't know if anyone is familiar with this. Again, I'm very familiar with this because we always had it as well. It's a figurine that is stuffed with straw, and it's placed high up in either, if you have a celebration in a tent, it sits up in the tent, or here it overlooks the square, and he's observing everything, but he's taking it all in. And then at the night of Tuesday, going into Ash Wednesday, he's burned, and he takes all the sins and everything with him, and no one will know from there on. You can have a fresh start for Lent. And that, again, that's what we want, right? We go through Lent to have a clear conscience ready for Easter. So I thought I was well. So I need to get back to my text. In quick summary, so Bruegel presented a wealth of customs related to the transition between the bodily desires of Carnival and the prayer, fasting, and almsgiving in Lent. And I think we have choices to make as well, as the couple in the middle of the painting. And I will leave you now with the question, which path am I choosing during Lent? Our second painting of the evening is entitled Ash Wednesday and was painted by Albert Herbert, a British artist, in 1992-1993. Albert Herbert was born in 1925 in London. He studied at the Royal College of Art in the late 1940s and early 1950s, alongside a group of artists that became known as the kitchen sink painters. Herbert became principal lecturer at St. Martin's School of Art in the 1960s and 70s. Early in his painting career, Herbert realized that he wanted to make figurative, emotive, symbolic paintings. However, he was fighting against the tide of times. In the early 1950s and early 60s, waves of American painting, led by abstract expressionism, burst over British artistic shores. Herbert found abstraction too restrictive, which led him to give up painting in a representational way for a time. He repressed his drive to make images that tell stories. Herbert eventually found a way back to figurative painting through looking at children's art and making primitive figurative etchings. It was while studying at a British school in Rome that Herbert, who had no religious background, was drawn towards Christianity. Herbert's idiosyncratic mystical paintings used biblical stories and religious subjects to reveal the inner world of the collective mind. His imagery became more profoundly biblical in themes, and he presented the biblical stories in a quintessentially modern way. We see two of his examples on this slide. The British art critic, religious Sister Wendy Beckett, and I brought the book, and you may or may not be familiar with her, described in her 1993 book, The Gate of Love, Albert Herbert as probably one of the greatest contemporary religious artists. Herbert seemed compelled towards biblical imagery, but it is significant that Beckett described him as a religious and not as a Christian painter. There's no self-conscious pity in Herbert's work, and his imagery often strays into freewheeling fantasy. Albert Herbert, painter and etcher, died in May 2008. As we consider our second work of art of the evening, I will quote from Genesis chapter 3, verse 19. I quote, "The Lord God said, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return." End of quote. And now I would like to hear what you maybe see in the painting. And can start really kind of, what are the colors? How is it constructed? What are the figures? Really open. I think that really helps us kind of broad, and then we can start focusing into more detail and what it might mean. I mean, there's never religion. I mean, paint art is what we think is right.
In his paintings, is that a bear or something like that? Right on the very right side. Very right.
Oh, okay.
Looks like an animal.
Mm,
In the brown. Yeah.
huh. Maybe, let's see. And because that's the beauty of it, sometimes other people see things and I've stared at this for a long time, it's like I haven't seen it. Maybe, no, I don't really see that. We have a snake down here. And we have a snake over here. But it kind of, so the foreground, if we look at the color palette, right.
I see there too. It's right on the very edge, looking right at me.
Okay.
This really reminds me of like hieroglyphics, like Egyptian style, particularly with the way that the man's feet are oriented and his hands are oriented in the same way. You see a lot of that in hieroglyphics and the mountains and I don't know, even the other ones that you show just feel, they have that feel to them, which is really interesting because as you say, he studied in London or Rome, so for it to have this kind of very tribal, very ancient feel it's throwing me off, and I don't know what to think.
Yeah. And we have two figures who are naked. So, and just keep Ash Wednesday in mind, and I read Genesis. So it's probably Adam and Eve, I would think. So he reminds us of the original sin, kind of particularly with the snake down here and the little one over there. And then the words, "To dust you will return." And then he kind of wrote it again and again, just to really rub it in, right? Really bring that home. And I think we we are confronted with the situation after they have committed the original sin. We see all the dark colors, the brown. It's almost like a scorched, maybe the Egyptian or again kind of maybe desert-like environment. There's no vegetation, so they have been expelled out of the Garden of Eden. However, what I thought was also really neat is there's still hope though, right? It's not all just dark. The light, the bright white, the sky, so towards heaven. I thought that was... Who has the microphone?
A couple of things. One, I wonder why it says 1945 under the dust. On the right-hand side, it says dust on the rocks. It says 1945. And then the other thing is, in the top right, the light on the paper, it looks like a crowd. It looks like that's a fuzzy crowd of people on the right side, just above the bear.
Yeah, and that could be the divide, right? So some are in heaven, some are saved, some are still trapped on this side of the divide. Yes? Yeah, beautiful.
When you look at paintings, are you ever able to speak to the artist in some fashion, or has the artist maybe written what it is he intended to say in the painting? Or are we just left to interpret?
Most of the time we are left with interpretations. There's sometimes quotes from the artists. And for example, next week I will talk a little bit about, or one of the 3 works of art is our tapestry that we have of the Transfiguration. That's in the gathering space. And so the artist is still alive. And we have lovely quotes and thoughts from him, why he interpreted the Transfiguration with the painting and why the way he did. But with particularly going further back, Renaissance, Baroque, there's not a lot of actual words from the artists.
That would be helpful.
It would, yeah. And it actually also seems that, particularly with modern works of art, sometimes they don't even give it a title, and then it's all up to you. But quite often that's also the intention of the artist, not to... Remember, sometimes I withdrew the title of paintings just to make us see and not being guided just because someone put a particular title on the paintings, like, oh yeah, I see that. So it's a little bit of both, right? It would be nice to know why artists chose a particular setting or color, but it's also for us to decide why it is.
He is so prominent in this painting, and in the background you see, well, in the gospel it says she was the mother of humankind.
Yes.
And that's what that looks like to me.
Yes, yeah.
That, I don't know if that's what the artist intended, but she was the first to eat the forbidden fruit. Okay. But becoming the mother of humankind, I don't know, it kind of looks like that.
Oh yeah,
Perhaps.
Yeah, she's very much a woman, right? We can tell she's a woman.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about, with the people in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's beautiful. In terms of times, we have to move on, but those are beautiful thoughts and interpretation of the painting. And kind of my thought idea is ashes remind us of our mortality and our sins. However, they also call us to confess our sins and over the next 40 days engage in repentance and return to God. And I leave you with the question, kind of, when I said, yes, there is a lot of people on the other side, so what are the steps that I can take to come closer to heaven or make it over the divide onto the other side?
I see it as more cosmic.
Okay.
We are part of the cosmos, yes. And the elements that we're made up of is also wherever we go after this existence. And it's very humbling that we're just a piece of this. And there's other things beyond here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, beautiful, yes.
I'm intrigued by the huge block of dust down below. So I don't know if that represents the enormous graveyard of dust of people who are still waiting to go. It's almost the same color as the color that's up there.
Oh, okay.
Like you said, was people. And and the shape of it is like, why is that shape there that way? Anyway, so it's like huge dust in your face. I mean, it's in your face, and I see a picture you take all of that, and that is on the right hand side.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes, no, absolutely beautiful. And this, so because all of it is what we see, and it's exactly what I want to have this conversation, people coming up with their own ideas, because I'm not going to stand here. I can say this is correct and this is not, because it's not. So beautiful.
The center to dust you will in return is the reverse image. So I find that very hopeful. When I move through my dust phase, I'm invited to return. So returning with all the people that have gone before me.
I too was drawn to that same spot of the picture of the center, and was wondering, because return is backwards, if that's, quote, a tomb or a portal to go to the beyond.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And Eve is inviting people to come to looking at us and saying,
Oh yeah, kind of an invitation, an open invitation. Yes, with the hand gesture. Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I think this is very much a hopeful picture. Even though we have dark colors in the foreground, and it might be in the first moment one is a little bit taken aback, but I fully agree. So that I think it's a very hopeful picture, because it's the light shines beyond, and we will get there. Yes. Beautiful.
interesting that Adam and Eve look like they're both covered with dust.
Excuse me?
Adam and Eve both look like they're covered with dust. Even like they first just now emerged from the dust or returned to the dust.
Yes. Okay. So we do have to move on, but this is exactly what I was hoping for. Thank you. So now we move on to our third work of art for the night, and it's by Britton Vivere, another British artist. Vivere lived from 1840 until 1920, at the height of the Victorian era in Great Britain. The Victorian era was a time of vast political reform and social change. The Industrial Revolution, the railway, shipping and economic booms, and rapid and profound scientific discovery, with the invention of the first telephone and telegraph. This was the period of empire building and the publication of Darwin's on the origin of species. Rivera's love of art came from his parents. His mother was a still life painter, and his father trained at the Royal Academy of Arts and later exhibited his work there. Rivera studied drawing and painting at the Drawing Academy at Cheltenham College and at the University of Oxford. Later in his life, he became a fellow at the Royal Academy of Arts. He even stood for election to become president, however, he failed his bid. Early in his career, when Rivera began to exhibit at the Royal Academy, his work would go unnoticed. However, that changed in 1869 when he exhibited the work The Long Sleep, which you can see here over on the left. The painting pulled at the heartstrings of the viewers and was an immediate hit with the Victorian art lovers. It was to be his first work of many which featured domestic animals and their owners intertwined with a sense of pathos. Rivera was a technically sophisticated and talented artist who would be best known for his animal paintings. And we see two more examples on the slide here as well. So that was mostly the paintings he would paint through his career. However, in the 1870s, Rivera began to exhibit classical and religious paintings. For example, Daniel in the Lion's Den, which is based on the biblical story about Daniel who stood strong in his faith and was not killed by the lions. You can see it here over to the left. Furthermore, in 1894, in total contrast to works of art Rivera had been exhibiting at the Royal Academy until then, he presented a painting Beyond Man's Footsteps. This painting is a wonderful example that shows Rivera's shift towards impressionistic painting. It is the style we will see in the third and last work of art, The Wilderness, The Temptation in the Wilderness, which we will explore in detail tonight. I would like you to once again focus your attention on the painting as I read a brief quote from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, verses 1 and 10. At that time, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, 'Worship the Lord your God and serve only him.'" And once again, I open it up to all of you, which is beautiful. And I think this is kind of calms us down a little bit compared to the other works we have seen tonight.
What I see looks like water to me. It doesn't look like sand or desert, but I am struck by the orange, red, yellows, the very warm colors in the back, which he has his back turned toward, and this is the way he's postured. Looks like he's, I don't know what it's like he's fighting something maybe from behind him. And then like there's a bird it looks like flying there.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is bluer and cooler in the foreground, where he's the direction he's facing. It almost feels like he's sitting on a rock.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, very wonderful visual analysis of this. Yeah, exactly. And if we focus on Jesus and he's bending down, and I think he's contemplating. If we think of he's in the desert, we don't know how long, but it's probably wearing on him, and he already knows what is to come for him, even though at this point it's the beginning of his public missionary. But he's probably not quite sure, right, about his path and where to go from here.
It makes me think of the scripture verse of the devil coming to tempt Jesus. He comes to him 3 times. He says, he takes him to the top of the temple, he takes him to the pyramid of the temple, and then the last that the angels came to the top of the mountain. He's thinking he needs the angels to come and minister to him. So he feels very lonely in that sense.
Yeah.
On the bottom left, it looks like there's a fox, maybe
Yes.
with its ears back, slinking away. And I don't know what the symbolism of that might be, but it does look like, just don't look at me. I'm moving out.
Yes, exactly. And if you think of the connotations that are associated with the devil, I mean, it's not, sometimes we see a depiction, Jesus meets the devil and it's obvious. I mean, in our minds, it's obvious, the devil. But that's not what life is, right? We don't step outside our house and someone with horns comes up to us and leads us the wrong way, right? That's not what life is. It's the tiny little things. And I think that really wanted to use the fox to kind of represent the devil is around. He's trying again and again, and he's probably trying a 3rd time, or he just tried and he maybe has finally given up, right? Because Christ has sent him away. Timely, which again, I didn't know that. While I was doing my research, I came across it and I thought it was really neat. So if we look up here, there's a very, very bright star. And it's the brightest star in the sky is Venus. But Venus, it's the morning star, but it's also associated with Lucifer. So again, it's this overshadowing of the devil that surrounds Christ while he is in the desert or on the mountain, and he constantly has to work at it as well as we do. I decided to give up chocolate, and trust me, it is really hard because everywhere I turn there's chocolate, and then you realize like, no. So, but then a beautiful thing. So there's probably Venus that Rivera wanted to show us. And then there's another star. It's not as bright, but is large. And so I kind of looked around, and it's probably Jupiter. And Jupiter is the devil interfering with him. While I was looking this up today, sorry, going here. This was last night. Every so many years, I think the next time it's in 2039, is when Venus and Jupiter are so close next to each other. It was just last night, I thought. That was just that's the beauty when I prepare the classes. I come across things that I never thought or I didn't really think about.
Did you take that picture? That they came
so close
until,
So yeah, I think this painting, and I love this painting. I really wanted to show it because it's a little bit different. It's not the devil right there, and because I really think it's not how life works. It's not that obvious, and we constantly have to make choices. And as a sum up, I never give the presentations a title, but if I would have been pressed to, and sometimes ask God to help us to make the right choices. So You have a question?
To me, it looks like Jesus is deep in prayer. And it looks like he's in communion with the Father.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he's asking him, kind of help me. And one thing, and I promise I won't go on forever. He's wearing a white dress, but it's not dazzling white. And keep the word dazzling in mind, because we're going to talk about dazzling white next week. Again, I think he's still on his way to get to the dazzling in the being the light. He's the savior of the world. He's the light of the world. But he also has to still go there. So, and there's a question. So, what are the temptations in my life? And maybe contemplate about that. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for coming, and hopefully see you next week.